Welcome back. Our next guest has been to 3 Paralympic Games, taken home a Paralympic bronze, and is a 2-time world champion. And she's only gathering speed, lads.
From Raheny.
Sorry, Orla.
To the global stage. Orla Comerford is here. Good morning to you.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Great to see you guys again.
Great to have you with us. A 2-time world champion. Yes. Are you training at the minute? Because obviously athletics is so, like, you have world championships at not till 2027, but there's obviously events going on all the time. Like, how do you split up? What's the training like at the minute?
Yeah, training's flat out at the moment. For us, our summer season is usually kind of May to August time. So there's plenty of competitions coming up this year, both in Europe and further afield. So the focus is really just like, how can we build on last year's successes and how can we build towards that qualification window, which opens next year for LA in 2028. So it's all go, full steam ahead. I'm going to be opening my season in June. So I have another I'm into my final block of training now before racing, which is super exciting.
Are you in your life outside of, we'll say, running? Are you as like, you live in a 4-year cycle? You're always planning. Are you as organised out? Like, genuinely, does it go into your other life?
I would like to think I am, but is that true? Probably not. I'm probably most organised when it comes to my training, and you know what I mean. I'll have things planned out 4 years in advance. I'll have
4 years in advance.
Yeah, you have to plan these things. And like, look, obviously, Plan A never really always happens. You have to have all your contingency plans. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt whenever the circumstances change, and that's what happens frequently in sport, as you know yourself. So, I mean, to be honest, outside of that, you try to have life organised in a way that supports that, but sometimes because you're kind of so focused on what you're doing in sport, sometimes the other stuff you just pick it up as you go, you know.
Yeah.
So
I find it fascinating because obviously within rugby you have Six Nations every year, you have competitions. Listen, you have the summer season coming up as well, to be excited for that as well. Let's talk about your condition, because obviously you started running in Raheny at 6 years of age. I think it was 11 you got diagnosed. You realised something wasn't quite right and got a diagnosis.
Yeah, I just came back from my summer holidays into school, realised I couldn't read my books or the board anymore, and was subsequently diagnosed with Stargardt, which basically means that my central vision deteriorates over time. So obviously it was a big change at the time for me.
So
but
is this right? Or what?
This picture here is kind of a visual representation.
Gives you exactly an idea of what it looks like. So I might recognise that someone's in front of me, but I might not recognise who. So that's where I'm going to pick up on someone's voice or how they carry themselves, how they dress. You know what I mean? The better you know someone, the easier it is to recognise them. And so the more familiar I am with a space or with a person, the easier it is to navigate, or easier someone is to recognise. So things like that, obviously, you can imagine how that takes its place in sport as well. Like, you're going to struggle sometimes with finding out where a finish line is or where a cone is in training. So for me, it's just about making sure that I've done my prep, that I've come out and I've maybe walked out the session before I do it, so I know what's maybe in my peripheral vision, because my peripheral vision would be better than my central. So how can I rely on that to kind of give me that feedback?
And you never stopped? Like, did you ever stop when you were 11 and this started happening and you're like, did you just take it in your stride?
Well, I think now it's easy for me to look back and think I took it in my stride. I'm not quite sure when I was there, but to be honest, I do just remember having a sense of feeling that some adults around me were starting to doubt me, or starting to be like, oh, maybe she's not able for that, and that really annoyed me. I remember just being like, well, I'll show them. Like, you know, I'm going to give this a go. And I felt like athletics was somewhere that I didn't feel different. I actually felt different because I was good at it. I felt like, okay, I've got a talent here. I've got something that I'm really passionate about. Like, I feel great when I'm here, so I'm going to keep turning up until I can't anymore. And thankfully, that's led me here.
What happened at that age then when you were 11? Were you still able to compete in the same competitions?
Yeah. So the majority of the competitions that I compete in are still able-bodied. So in terms of like the para space, I only moved into para athletics when I was 18, and my first big big para event was the Paralympics, so which is nuts, you know. Like, I really did it the wrong way. I went in the deep end, but I suppose most of the time I'm racing against girls who can see completely.
And then train alongside them as well.
Train alongside, yeah. My group is probably one of the strongest sprinting groups in Ireland. I'm very privileged to train with so many talented athletes and with a great coach, Daniel. So, like, we really kind of challenge each other and push each other, and that's a great environment to be in, because that's the environment you're going to be in when you step out on the international stage. Like, people are going to push you, and you want everybody to be faster and getting better, because the rising tide brings up all the boats. So for me, para sport is athletics, and it just, for me, that we have lots of opportunities this summer to race in mixed classification races. So I'm a T13 classification, which means that I run against girls who are visually impaired at the Paralympics. But sometimes when we have races, showcase races at maybe a Diamond League, or for example Morton Games this year in Dublin, which is going to be really exciting, you have girls from different classifications. So you might have have the T38 classification, which is girls who might have CP. You have the T64s, girls who are amputees. So we're going to run together in a race to kind of show people what parasport is about, what we have to offer. And, you know, that's unusual because it's not what you get at the international level at World Championships or Europeans, but it's what we're going to have.
That's going to be
here.
Pressure.
Yeah.
The
really
pressure's going to be on, all run up against each other.
And it's just like World Championships, or it's World Champions or Paralympic champions across all these different ones.
Yeah. Wow. And I love what the Morton League, but the Diamond League, what that's done to athletics. It's so much fun. It's brought such fun into it.
Yeah.
But for you, you've made this point that I really love about the Paralympics, that people kind of misunderstand the phrase, the word itself.
Yeah.
Because it's parallel.
Yeah, exactly.
Olympics.
So para is supposed to represent parallel to. So like the Paralympics run parallel to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to represent that, like the Olympics is obviously people at the top of their game, high performance sport. That's the same in Paralympics.
Yeah.
It's high performance sport. It's not participatory sport. It's not just because you have a disability and you're into sport, you go to the Paralympics. Like that's couldn't be further from the truth. Like, you know yourselves, just because you're into sport and you do it doesn't mean you're going to the Olympics. Yeah. You know, there's obviously some people who that's what they go after and they pursue it and when they're at the top of their game hope to qualify and make it there. And so for us it's just about making sure that people understand that and representing that high level of sport in our community.
At such a high level of sport, people probably look at you and you have asthma. They probably think you can't compete at the top level with asthma, but it is something that so many people have to be able to deal with.
Absolutely. And you know, it's such a misconception. There are so many athletes who have asthma and manage their asthma, and the big thing is early intervention. Like when you're a kid and you find out you have asthma, making sure that you're getting your treatment really early is really what sets you up for success. So being able to manage it as you're younger, as you come through your teenage years, sets you up in a really good place to be able to be, you know, pursue life as an athlete or whatever it is that you want to do. And I think there might be a misconception that if you have a kid who has asthma, it's like, oh, can they do sport?
Exactly,
or should I be keeping them back? And I think the message is just if you can get the right support and if you can get in contact with the right people, get the supports from the Asthma Society of Ireland, whether it's through their nurses, their helplines, online, that really once you're in that position, your kids can do anything. Because
there is, like the inhalers and stuff are on the prohibited list, but if you've got the doctor's note and it's all written down and very clear, then it's totally fine. So parents shouldn't be worried. No, not at all. And like I've had asthma since I was a child. I obviously have my medical records throughout the years of all the struggles I've had with asthma and the different, you know, tests or the different diagnoses from doctors. So that's all covered for sport.
I think it's really interesting because I remember like our school was a really sporty school. You know, we're hockey, basketball, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the girls I knew, if they had asthma, it was kind of, they were a bit left out by teachers anyway, being like, well, they're not going to be, you know, at the top form, which I just think is so sad, especially in a time now where we're talking about kids on screens all the time. And we had Mark Camden on earlier on talking about how important it is to have all children playing, and PE is so important. So important because, like, to be honest, like I know that sport isn't everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody loves sport, but there are so many opportunities in sport, not just for a career in it, but it's an outlet physically, it's an outlet mentally, but socially as well. Like you said, it's this big connector piece. And if you have a kid with asthma and they're told, oh, maybe because there's a physical element, we have to keep them out. You keep them out of that social space. You keep them out of that ability to use movement for your mental health. And like that's completely, there's no need for it. When you have the right support, you can be involved in anything. And I think, do you know what I mean? I think my parents were great for that when I was young. They made sure I had the right support and they said, off you go, like get involved. It's important as well while you're an athlete competing at the top is have something outside of it as well. Yeah. And art is a huge part of your life as well. I mean, you studied in the National College of Art, Fine Art Media. Are you still involved in that? Are you still doing little bits on the side? So to be honest, at the moment, it's definitely a smaller portion of my life, but it's something I like to always keep there. Because I think for me, there were times where I maybe thought, okay, art is something I'm going to do after sport and I'll leave that off, and that's not what I do now. And I found myself really missing that outlet. Like for me, it's a really, whether that's just going to an art gallery, whether it's researching a new artist, whether it's trying some new technique or playing around with something. I think for me, it's lovely to have that outlet because it's how I represent myself. It's kind of how I can switch off. Is this your exhibition here? Yeah, this is. So this is one of my interactive installation pieces. Right, my goodness me, that's incredible. Oh my God, the actual scale of it. Yeah, so those are large wooden sculptural pieces and then video work that's projected on. Oh my God, the wood is amazing. A small sensor in the front of it, so it takes up skeletal data, so based on where somebody is in a space, it changes. But that takes up time, so I would imagine that's the problem whenever you're...
getting the practice in.
I'd love to be doing work at that scale all the time, but unfortunately at the moment I don't have the ability to do that. So for me it's about like keeping my toe in the water and being able to make that transition when I come out of sport back into art. Like I'd love to be a practicing artist. Like to go from saying I'm doing my dream job now as an athlete to move to my next dream job as being an artist, like that would be a pretty nice life.
My dream was always to come to work in Ireland.
That's the next dream, obviously, if you'll have me.
Always. Oh, those days dreaming of this. Exciting art.
Or there might be a space on the couch. I don't know what's going on here.
There we go. Very quickly.
Listen, it's so nice seeing you. Hopefully we'll see you before the Worlds next year. I know the training schedule, because that's the big one to qualify for the Paralympics in LA, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. Listen, for anyone, any parent who's watching right now, Asthma Society of Ireland have an asthma awareness week from the 4th until 10th of May if you want to talk about what's going on with your child. Orla, thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks so much,
this
guys.
summer.
Cheers, thank you so much.
Right, still to come, we are looking at what this weekend's must-watch movies are.
Plus, we've got effortless style on the catwalk. Back shortly on Ireland AM.